And welcome, guys. Good morning. Thank you for joining us with the Sunday gathering this morning. Appreciate all you guys being here. Welcome. Happy Sunday morning. It's good to see some new names in the chat. I saw SI Gaming. It's good to have you this morning. I can talk about your topic, and we'll do that pretty soon here. We have kind of an order of operation we go through, but we will get to that shortly. Then I see all you other guys. Let me just say some good mornings to all y'all. Morning, Flat Bob. I got your topic. Rick Bowser, good morning to you. Linda Connor, HRGM333. Thank you for joining this morning. Who else we got? We got Robert. We got Julia. Good morning. Good morning. Who else? We got Alvin. But Alvin, you said you're sick. I'm sorry you're sick. It sounds like you won't be with us this morning, but you can catch up. Obviously, we'll be praying for you. And actually, got to put that on my prayer request list here. Yes. Just in case you need it, we'll go ahead and pray for you. Who else we've got? We've got Terry, good morning. Christine, good morning. Looking up for him, Pilgrim, I got you. And I think I got a topic from you, if I'm not mistaken. I got a prayer request from you, that's right. And then, who else we got? Patriot Keto, we got you, and I got your topic about reincarnation. And what else? I think that's about it. I think I got everybody. If I missed you, I am sorry, but good morning. It's good to have all you guys with us. All right, so as usual, I'll go ahead and play the welcome message. And again, as always, that's a chance for you guys who are familiar here, your regulars, to just go get a cup of coffee. There will be a timer on it, show you got about 3.5 minutes. But for those of you who are new, this will explain the channel and what we're doing here and what we've done in the past. Maybe get you acquainted with Bible Scribe. So here we go. I'll catch you on the other side. Thank you, guys. Welcome to the Bible Scribe channel. My name is David, and let me briefly introduce the Bible Scribe ministry. I grew up in the Protestant church, but left it in 2019 mainly because of disagreements with some of their doctrines, particularly the doctrine of tithe. I find incorrect according to scriptures, and frankly disturbing. I taught in the churches for a long time, but I started this YouTube channel in 2018 as an extension of my ministry in teaching the Bible to people around the world. Today I've produced over 500 videos with research that is focused on the Bible first, ancient writings second, and then a variety of other topics. One of the most important things I do is the Sunday live stream, which is an online church in every sense of the word. It is called the Sunday Gathering. We connect, discuss, and pray for one another on a weekly basis. And we also tackle some of the biggest topics of the day and find out what the scriptures and the other ancient texts say about them. Everyone is invited and welcome to join us on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Central, and 7:30 a.m. Pacific. You can easily use my website at bible-scribe.com to access all of these videos and much more. There are also more than 50 research articles on different topics, from flat earth to early church fathers to holistic cancer treatments and prevention. In addition to the website, I have developed a Bible research application, the Bible Scribe app, to study and research the Bible and more than 50 other ancient writings. This app is available to the public with limited access, but requires a membership for access to all of the writings and the features that it offers. Many people have asked how they can support the work I am doing, and that is done by purchasing a membership on the Bible Scribe app through my Give, Send, Go campaign. It is at givesendgo.com/BibleScribe. For every $10 you pay, you will get a month membership on the Bible Scribe app. It is completely up to you as to whether or not you use this membership, and you can set this up as a monthly payment or as a lump sum, and your membership will be applied or extended accordingly. Payments can also be taken on YouTube through supers, gifts, or memberships to the channel. But please know that I offer all the video content, the website, the Sunday church gathering live streams, free and without expectation of any financial support. There is no tithe required by God according to the Bible. nor do I require any form of tithe or financial support for participation in our live streams or access to all of my videos and website online. So thank you for visiting the Bible Scribe channel and ministry, and may God bless you in your research and your journey to grow closer to Him. All right, welcome back, guys. Thank you for taking a little time there. Hope you got your coffee break if you needed it. And we can go ahead and get started today. Thank you, HRG, for that support that you put in the chat. Again, I will apply that to your Bible Scribe app membership as always. And I just thank you so much for continuing to support what we're doing here as a family, as a church family. Thank you so much. Let me get that prayer request, HRG, put that in my list here. I don't want to miss those. If I miss anything, I don't want to miss the prayer requests. All right. So, as far as any other announcements, I just guess I'll mention what I've been working on this week. I think most of you guys know that the Simon Magus video, and there may be two Simon Magus videos that I actually produce because of the breadth of the information. One is going to be the story of the life of Simon Magus, and then the other one is going to be a treatise on his doctrines. His doctrines, by the way, the things he taught, he didn't just go around doing magical signs in front of people to sway them away from God. He actually taught them doctrine. And the doctrine he taught became the foundation of many things we see even in the modern day. So I'm going to do probably 2 videos on that, unless I can find a way to do it all in one and not make it 2 or 3 hours long. The other thing that's come out of that study, that research, is a lot of information I've found in the writings I've had to read to understand all about Simon Magus. I found other topics in these writings that are just incredible. And so I've got multiple videos in the works at the same time right now. The first one that's going to come out probably midweek is going to be called The Demonology of Peter from the Clementine Homilies. The Clementine Homilies is called a pseudo-Clementine writing. It's from the 2nd or 3rd century AD. So it actually, by most scholars, is considered to be written by Clement, the Bishop of Rome. And it's literally the story of Clement's Christianity, his salvation, coming to Christ and understanding and belief, and then following the apostles around as they're battling Simon Magus. And so one of the things that has come out of this is there's a huge treatise on a sermon, essentially, by Peter about demons. And I think that this is apropos. I think it's something that people need to understand about how demons work, how they affect your life, how they, quote, attach themselves onto you. So there's going to be a lot in that video I think is just important for people in general to understand about the way demons work. So I'll be producing that soon. And then there's going to be probably 3 or 4 other videos that come out of some of that information. Not the demonology specifically, just other information from these writings. So I'm looking forward to getting all of that done. And so that's kind of what I've been working on, just kind of sifting through all that and getting it all together. You saw I did a short video last night. There's going to be another short video that comes out Tuesday that's based on a comment I had with somebody online. So I'm just trying to, push little things out if I can along the way as I'm researching other stuff. So I hope that it's been enjoyable for you guys, and we'll continue to try to do that. I'm just glad to be able to get more videos out. I think that that's what I'm going to focus on while I'm working on the heavier stuff like Simon Magus. I'm going to be trying to get more smaller videos out based on topics that don't take as long. So I can definitely do that. We'll try to continue that trend. All right. So before we get started, we're going to start by reading in Acts chapter 17 today. That'll be our order. We're going to pray first, and then we're going to go into Acts chapter 17 as we continue our study through the book of Acts. And then after that, we will take each of the topics you guys have suggested, and we'll just attack them one by one. That's our standard operation here. And I try to take the topics that are from newer people first, because we, of course, have our regulars that are here every week. And, we are a church family. And so I do try, though, to give preference in the topics to our newer people, because it's great to have new people on the channel, on the stream. So, all right, let's start with our prayers, and prayer requests have been mentioned. If you do have any other prayer requests, please put them in the chat, and I'll scrape them up, give them to our prayer group this week. But let me go ahead and bow my head as you're doing that, and I'll say a prayer for us as we get started this morning. Thank you guys for joining. Lord God, I do thank you so much for this time to be together, a time to go through the scriptures, to go through different topics and talk about them in light of what you've taught us. Help me to be able to do just that, and to guide and lead, and to be humble in that, but also bold in statements about the truth. And please bring understanding to all of our minds and hearts. Thank you for the love and care we have for each other and for you. We give all of this time and everything that happens here to you for your glory, for the advancement of the kingdom. It's in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, that we pray these things. Amen. All right, guys, thank you so much. All right. SI Gaming, I got that question. I'm going to put that in our topics, and I will address that as well, okay? It's just going to take a second. We're going to get through our Bible reading first, then we'll go to those topics. All right. I see you guys are just eating up that Mandela effect stuff, so I'll let y'all talk about that. But let's go ahead and get into our Bible reading this morning. If I can see well enough to type, my eyes are not the greatest this morning. All right, so our Bible reading takes us to Acts chapter 17. Again, I'm having trouble this morning staying on track. I'm trying to do a lot of things. And by the way, it's interesting, this morning I'm trying to stream on X at the same time. So we're on YouTube and Rumble, and I believe we're on X as well. I haven't double checked to see if the stream is functioning there. Maybe one of you guys can jump over to X if you are following the Bible Scribe channel on X, and just check to see if it shows that I'm streaming. I would love to hear. I'm not taking a ton of time out today to make sure that it is working, but it looked like to me everything was working as I was setting it up last night. So I think that we're on 3 different platforms today. So maybe I can keep doing that and really expand my reach a little bit. So that'll be great. All right. Flat Bob, you're asking if I got your question. Let me see before we get started on Acts. Your question. I don't know, Robert, if your question about Trump is a question for me or if it's just a statement. I can put it down towards the end if we want to talk about that. Yeah, Flat Bob, I'm not sure if you had a topic. I'm not sure I see, brother. Well, anyway, if it was your question, no, that's the same question about Trump. So I don't know if that's the one. Julia, I got your question about Ezekiel 20. Yes. Awesome, Patriot. Thank you for checking on X. So I'm live on 3 platforms. That's awesome. Sweet. And SI Gaming, thank you for that. All right. All right. Oh, Flat Bob, the foreign military base. Yeah, we can talk about that. Oh, and I do have that. Okay, good. We're good. We're good on all of them. I got them. All right, great. Thank you, guys. Good morning, Suomi. It's good to see you. And Gay Marie, it's good to see you too. And CPAC. Good to have all you guys. Or CCAC, excuse me. All right. Let's jump in then to Acts chapter 17. So let me get over here, and I will, as usual, use the Bible Scribe app. We'll go straight to Acts 17. Let's see if I can remember where we were in Acts chapter 16 before we go forward. All right. Let's see. This is when Paul and I believe Silas were put in prison near Philippi. And they saved the jailer, if you remember. By God's power, he caused an earthquake. He caused their shackles to be loosed. The jailer thinks he's going to have to kill himself so he doesn't get blamed for losing the prisoners. But Paul and Silas don't run away. Instead, they go to the jailer and they go to his family. And they preach the gospel and they are all saved. So this is all miraculous. It's all by the hand of God. Then after the family is saved of the jailer, they go back to the prison and stay there and wait for to hear from the magistrates who put them there in jail from Philippi. So after all this happens, the magistrates decide to let them go, partially because Paul and Silas are Roman citizens, and they call this out and say, hey, do you realize what you've just done? Which this would have been, of course, a total breach of Roman law to put them in prison. So that's where we are. It says after they were out of the prison here at the end of chapter 16, they went to the house of Lydia. This is this woman who's a well-known Christian woman in the Philippi area near the river, near Philippi, if you remember all of that. And so they are still staying in this region. Again, I'll go ahead and get the map ready here so we're ready to look at these areas of the world where they are. Oops, here we go, right here. And we're already pretty close. Yeah, here's the Middle East. And so where we were in Philippi, remember this is now part of Macedonia. They had traveled way over here. So most of our first missionary journey and all of that kept us over in, I lost my drawing tools. Hold on one second. There we go. As you remember, of course, Jerusalem being over in this area, Palestine, Judea, Phoenicia. The first missionary journey took us mostly in these areas with Paul. But now we are not there. We are over in Greece proper. They call it Macedonia at the time. And we're still right here at Philippi. Okay, so this is the area we're in right now we're talking about. Unless chapter 17 shifts that. So just be aware, remember where we are. I always like to know exactly where I am, ground myself in reality before I get into the scriptures. All right. Verse 1, chapter 17, when they had passed through Amphipolis, I'm going to say this word right, Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. So this, of course, is where the epistle of Paul to the Thessalonians was talking about, the Thessalonians. Now, Thessalonica on our map, moving things around here, not trying to. All right. As you can see on the map here, Philippi here, Thessalonica, very nearby. So this is a short travel away. And now again, we are in the midst of Paul's second missionary journey that, of course, is going to go all into Macedonia and these different churches. So that's where we are. Verse 2, and Paul, as his manner was, went into them to this synagogue of the Jews, and 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them out of the scriptures. Again, remember, this is the pattern that Paul always has done. Even with the Gentile nations, he goes to the Jews first and reasons with them because, as we've seen a couple times, it's mentioned in the scriptures that even the Gentiles sometimes hear what the Jews are teaching in the synagogues. That the Jews go into the synagogues every Sabbath and they read out of the books of Moses, okay, the law. So this is the pattern. And of course, it kind of goes along with the Great Commission that Christ said to start with the Jews and then reach out to the Gentiles, essentially. So that's what we're seeing here. He goes into the synagogues and he reasons with the Jews in the synagogues in Thessalonica for 3 days, 3 Sabbaths. So 3 weeks he is in this area going on the Sabbath to reason with them. And the Sabbath, by the way, of course, is the day that all the Jews are gathering into those synagogues to hear the words read from the books of Moses, the books of law. So this is how it works, and this is how Paul is going about this. Verse 3, opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this Jesus, whom I preach to you, is Christ. So Paul talking through this with them, helping them understand that Jesus was the Messiah. That's always the foundational element of this preaching to the Jews. It's always to get them to realize that Jesus, having walked the earth and done all these miracles and then died and been resurrected by God, literally was the Messiah that they've been looking for, right? Verse 4, and some of these Jews in Thessalonica believed and consorted with Paul and Silas, and of the devout Greeks a multitude, and of the chief women not a few, meaning a lot. So not only, again, do we see the Jews believing, some of them, but of the devout Greeks, the Gentiles, many, a great multitude believed, and a great multitude of women along with the men. So again, it's amazing to see, and it fulfills the words of Christ. Remember that he said that by the other nations I will make you, Israel, a disgrace. I will, how did he say it exactly? If you remember the wording he used, I can't for some reason remember it, but it was something like that I will humble Israel by the Gentile nations, by the other nations. And so that's what happens in every single one of these Gentile cities as Paul and Silas go through. But the Jews that did not believe, oh boy, here we go again. It's always the group of Jews that don't believe that start stirring up trouble for the apostles as they go through these cities. They were moved with envy and took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, and gathered a company, and set all the city on an uproar, and assaulted the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. Apparently, this house of Jason is where the disciples were staying, Paul and Silas and their followers. And so these Jews with their lewd fellows of baser sort, I don't know exactly what this would mean other than these were disreputable people, like maybe mercenaries. Maybe they were paying them to help with the more physical nature of what they were trying to do, trying to actually drag the disciples out into the streets, because that's what it says they were trying to do, bring them out to the people. But it says, when they found them not, they drew Jason and certain brethren unto the rulers of the city, crying that these have turned the world upside down, who come hither also. So they couldn't find the apostles. Apparently they weren't in the house at the time. So they took out Jason, the owner of the house, who had harbored the apostles, took them out and the disciples with them. And it says they accused them of turning the world upside down. And they say, Jason has received them, and these all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying there is another king, one Jesus. No kings, huh? Or too many kings. This is the too many kings protest, not the no kings protest. Which is funny, by the way. I was driving through a town named Cleveland, Georgia yesterday. And even in this little bitty mountain town, Cleveland, Georgia, there were probably 150 protesters. And it was funny, as I drove past, I opened my window and I just did a thumbs down the whole time. I was just doing this. And I didn't even look at them. I just kept my gaze going down the road. I was driving. But it was so funny. It was like doing the wave. As I went by the protesters, there's this wave of yelling. And it was funny. The overarching word that I heard from all of them was democracy, democracy. I was just like, oh my gosh, you people are so insane. It's just dumb. It was dumb. But anyway, it was kind of funny. My wife got a kick out of it. So anyway. But this is not the No Kings protest here. This is the Jews and their probably paid mercenaries crying, there's too many kings. There's this Jesus that they're talking about. And they're talking about him as the king in place of Caesar, which is actually, in a sense, not true. But, I mean, obviously Jesus being the king over all, but, they weren't usurping Caesar. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, like, we have the writings, specifically like Paul in the book of Romans, is it chapter 11, saying that, you should obey the governing authorities. They're put in place by God for a reason. Don't cause trouble with the authorities as we go through and teach everyone about Jesus Christ. We give them the gospel. That's what that passage was about, actually, too. And Christians all argue over whether you should obey the laws and stuff or not. Well, this really was Paul teaching the Christians at that time, hey, when you go through cities and you do things, you teach people about the gospel, obey the laws. There's no reason to cause an uproar and ruin the chance of the gospel of spreading. So it was about obeying the laws. God puts the leaders in place that he puts for reasons we don't understand, etc. And in some sense, that does apply to the current day. But anyway, we continue here, verse 8. These people, these Jews and their thugs, they troubled the people and the rulers of the city when they said all this about Jesus, and the people heard this. And when they had taken security of Jason and of the other, they let them go. So they let Jason and the others go because they really didn't have anything to hold them on. Verse 10, the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night to Berea, who coming thither went to the synagogue of the Jews. So this all got stirred up. They knew that they were going to attack or try to jail Paul and Silas again. So in Thessalonica, they left the whole city, and they go by night to Berea. So let's pull up, where is Berea? I'm sure it's close by here. I wish I had done this earlier, but I was, like I said, I was traveling yesterday, so I didn't have a chance. All right, so this is a good map that shows us Thessalonica here and Berea over to the west of that. So if we come over here, I'm actually going to try to mark that. Oh, I already had it. I already had it on the map right here. In the modern day, this town that was Berea at that time is now called Veria. Now, the letter B and V, by the way, etymologically are literally the same. So sometimes you'll see older versions of words that now start with a B, but they're written with a V in Latin. And it's because, or vice versa, and it's just because B and V are really interchangeable in most ancient languages. So as you translate and discover words. All right, so they're in Berea. And again, what do? They come to the synagogue of the Jews. Every time, okay? Every time. We just have to realize that's what they did. Verse 11, these were more noble than those in Thessalonica. These Jews, it says, that they received the word with readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily, whether the things were so. So that's interesting. Now, I guess these are Jews and Gentiles, but it is the synagogue they went to. So it's mostly Jews that start out here. But it's saying that they received the word with readiness of mind. They searched the scriptures to find out if they were true or not. So when they heard Paul and Barnabas talking about this stuff, the gospel, that Jesus was their Messiah that they'd been waiting for, they actually went to the scriptures to see if they could figure it out for themselves. So again, this is what people talk about when they say, hey, be a Berean in your scripture study. Well, that's the notion, and I would, wholeheartedly encourage that for every Christian, that your first response when you are approached with a new idea or a new concept related to the scriptures or God or Jesus Christ, that if you are truly searching for the truth, then you should, if you don't understand or have a defense against what you're hearing that's real and good, then you should go to the scriptures regardless and double check it. This helps refine you and your belief system as well as anything. When you hear a new idea, something new come out, that you just go straight to the scriptures and try to verify it for yourself. This, number one, it helps you solidify your belief system. It's repetition in going to these places in the scriptures, learning things about the scriptures, again, helps your familiarity with the Bible itself, and builds in you an ability to quickly ascertain whether things are in alignment with the scriptures or if they're not. The more you do this, the better you get at it. So I would just encourage you as a Christian, make your mindset this. When you're approached with a new idea, don't immediately just attack everything, but double check it against the scriptures. Double check it against what you believe. But of course, the scriptures should be our final line of authority. So many people here in Berea believed after they checked the scriptures for themselves. Also, the honorable women, which were Greeks, Gentiles, and of men, not a few. So Gentile men and women together. But when the Jews of Thessalonica had knowledge that the word of God was preached at Berea by Paul, they came there as well. So you just can't keep a bad Jew down, can you? So as we have seen, they've done this in other places too. If you remember when Paul was over here in Iconium and let's see, where is it? Nope, further east here. Remember when Paul was on his first missionary journey, it was the same thing. They were in Antioch of Pisidia. They went to Iconium. They went to Lystra. They went to Derbe. And the whole time they had Jews following them. Paul got stoned in one of the cities by Jews from another city. So it's man, you can't keep a bad Jew down, I guess. It's just seems to be how it is. These guys were very mean. Very mean. So in this case, the Jews at Thessalonica making the same trip over to Berea when they heard that that's where they had gone, trying to get them. Maybe they brought their band of thugs with them. You never know. All right, so it says, immediately the brethren then sent Paul away to go, as it were, to the sea, but Silas and Timotheus stayed there. So they sent Paul away. Maybe they thought Saul was the lightning rod for these Jews. So they got Paul to leave. They left Silas and Timotheus there with the Bereans to continue teaching. And they conducted Paul and brought him to Athens. And this would be Athens, Greece. Let me pop it open here. Athens. Yeah. So you see where it is, southern Macedonia. So Athens down there. That should show you kind of where we've been now. Making the journey from Philippi to Thessalonica, Berea, and then Paul gets on a boat and he goes boop, 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 down here to Athens. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. They try to get Paul out to just maybe suppress all the craziness for a little while in Berea. It says, while Paul waited for them in Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. Now you can imagine in Athens, of course, Greece, we have even today, we have the ruins of the pagan gods' temples and structures, all the homage given to the pagan deities, which we know from other writings were literally the angels of old or Nephilim. We know this because actually, and I need to do a video on this because there's a few sources that just say this plain out. They just say it directly, that's where the mythology of the Greeks and Romans came from. And so Athens was full of these, and at that time they weren't ruins. This is the heyday of all those different ancient areas, pagan temples, the goddess Athena, all this different stuff. So you can imagine what it was like. It was amazing. And Paul's spirit was stirred against that. He saw that the whole city was given to this idolatry. So where did he go? He goes to the synagogue with the Jews, and he disputes with them. And he's in the market daily with them. This was, of course, the time frame, and they had the historicity of the philosophers in Athens. Socrates, Plato, the Greek philosophers, standing in the marketplace daily, discussing their ideas with people. So Paul follows suit. He goes to the marketplace. He stands up and starts teaching people about Jesus Christ, in contrast to the philosophers too. So this is amazing. And Paul's doing exactly what he should be doing here in Athens, trying to get the word of the gospel out to these people who are just riddled with pagan idol worship. Verse 18, certain philosophers, here's the philosophers, here they come. The Epicureans, the Stoics, encountered him. So it's exactly what I just said. The Stoic philosophers of the city are now coming out of the woodwork to come against Paul's teaching. Some say, what will this babbler say? Others said, he seems to be a setter forth of strange gods, because he preached to them Jesus and the resurrection. So they're seeing his preaching as an introduction of new gods to their system. I mean, they're totally oblivious to God and Jesus Christ here. It's a very pagan, Gentile city. Verse 19, and they took him and they brought him to Areopagus, apparently one of the philosophers there, saying, may we know what this new doctrine that you speak of is? For you bring certain strange things to our ears. We would know, therefore, what these things mean. Hey, at least they were asking, right? Verse 21, for all the Athenians and strangers which spent their time there in nothing else but just to tell or hear new things. Again, this is the thing that happens in Athens, in the streets, the marketplace. The Athenians will go there in the daytime just to hear what the philosophers are talking about, just to listen. Okay. Of course, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have phones with them. So this was the entertainment in Athens. Go and hear the philosophers talk. See what they're saying today. It's going to be incredible. This was their theater, if you will. Verse 22, Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, ye men of Athens, I perceive in all things you are too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore you ignorantly worship. Well, him I will declare to you. Now this is interesting to me. Like, you've probably heard this story before, where Paul goes to them and he sees an altar they built to an unknown God, and he uses that to try to help them understand who God is. Now, was that altar really built for Jehovah God of the Israelites? Probably not. But Paul has done this a couple times, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I think I've seen Peter do this also, where he takes something that's in their psyche, and even though it's not perfectly right, he uses it to help them understand God. Okay, so you might think that's deceptive in a way. And, I see that, but also it's interesting. It's just interesting that he uses these things that are in their knowledge base already to help them understand the true God. It does and should teach us a little something about how you really need to talk to people about the gospel sometimes. Sometimes the only way they can understand it is from their perspective. The only way you're going to make a crack in their worldview is if you somehow get inside their perspective, understand it, and then teach them from that angle. Okay? Now, it's not always an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to do. So Paul here, I think, being pretty, brilliant about the way he is trying to talk to these people. So he says, this altar to the unknown God, you ignorantly worship it, but it is someone I'm going to tell you about. There's a God I will tell you about. Verse 24, God that made all the world and all therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwells not in temples made with hands, neither is worshipped with men's hands, as though he needed anything, seeing he gives to all life, breath, and things, and has made of one blood all nations for men to dwell on the face of the earth, and has determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. Of course, this all comes from the Tower of Babel. That they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he is not far from each of us. This is brilliant by Paul. He's going down their pathways, their mindset, and taking them straight to God the Father. For in God, he says, we live and move and have our being. Now, this is philosopher stuff. He's trying to help them understand, even the philosophers, from a philosophical mindset. In God, the Father, we live, we move, we have being. And he says, as certain of your own poets, your philosophers have said, we are also his offspring. We come from God. We came from him. Verse 29, for as much then as we are offspring of God, we ought not to think that the Godhead is like gold or silver or stone, graven by art and man's device. God, the Father, the true God, has nothing to do with all these temples, he's saying. Engraven images, things that man have built and created, has nothing to do with God. Verse 30, the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has appointed a day in which, now this is critical, because God has appointed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has ordained. What did he just say? How do you process this statement? You put it in line with the prophecy that you know. This is talking about the day of judgment. This is talking about the great white throne. And who is the man whom he has ordained to judge? Well, it's Jesus Christ, of course. And that follows suit with everything we know about prophecy and the great white throne judgment. Jesus will be given authority. Well, he's been given authority by God to do all of this. But at the great white throne judgment, under God's authority, Jesus will judge every man, living and dead. He says, wherefore he has given assurance to all men in that he raised Jesus from the dead. What's the assurance that the resurrection will take place and that judgment will occur? The assurance is that Jesus was resurrected himself, the one who will do the judging. Okay, so many times throughout the Bible and the early church writings, this is said, that the resurrection of Jesus Christ was to prove to mankind that the general resurrection of all men will occur, and that God will do it through the power of the Holy Spirit. So just realize that that's how those things are connected, okay? Verse 32, when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, then some mocked, and others said, we will hear you again on this matter. Like they were like, well, we'll think about this. We'll come back and think about this. So Paul departed from among them after he had taught these things. Howbeit certain men stuck to him, clave unto him, and believed, among which was Dionysius the Areopagite. So one of the followers of Areopagus, the philosopher it mentioned, Dionysius, he believed, and he went along with Paul as he departed, and also a woman named Damaris and others with them. So there was a number that heard Paul's teaching and followed him along. So this is amazing. I mean, there's Acts chapter 17. I just thank you guys for, sticking with me through all this. This, to me, is so important. It's so important to hear what happened, to live through it with Paul, I think, is to me what's happening here. I feel like I'm there with him, and I hope that you guys get that from these Bible readings, that you feel like you're there, you can see it happening, like it's a movie, because it was real. And I just I love this. I love hearing how Paul so brilliantly just navigated through these different types of people and how to talk to them in a way they would understand. Amazing stuff. So here we are. So good. Thank you guys for joining me this morning and going through that. Now I see our HRG and a few of you have asked about Red Raven. She's one of our, regulars, and I don't know. I haven't heard from Red Raven that I know of, but I can check my messages in some places and see if I can find out what's going on with her. But I hope that she's fine. I haven't heard anything. Deborah Hicks, you say you disagree that this is referring to the Great White Throne Judgment. The Greek word used is melo, which means about to happen. Well, Deborah Hicks, I would just ask you on that one, if he is telling Gentiles in Athens, okay, think about this. Because I would imagine, Deborah, that you are saying that you feel like these statements about the judgment are more of a preterist understanding of a 70 AD fulfillment for that judgment. The problem with that is, who is he talking to? He's talking to mostly Gentiles in Athens. He's not going to the Jews. He went to the marketplace in Athens. So we're not in the place of Jerusalem where the judgment in 70 AD would occur, and we're not talking to the people against whom it would occur in 70 AD. There was no judgment against the Athenians in 70 AD. So it obviously, to me, is not talking about 70 AD. It has nothing to do with 70 AD. I mean, that to me. And so I just don't know how you can connect what he just said to these Athenians and the philosophers in Athens who have nothing to do with the Jewish nation and connect that to 70 AD. 70 AD didn't have anything to do with these people. So I don't know. All right. Well, we're about to get into our topics. So as Flat Bob, you say there, if you guys don't mind, if you're on the stream, go ahead and hit the like button. I think it does help us in terms of YouTube. And I would appreciate that if y'all just hit the like button and boost us a little bit. All right. Okay, let's go to our topics then. What have we got this morning? Got a lot. Now, because SI Gaming, because you ask these questions, and I don't remember if I've seen you recently, if you've been on the channel. I figured you were kind of new, so that's fine. And I kind of wanted to do your topics first because you asked, and you're kind of new to me. So let me do this. First, which deuterocanonical and apocryphal books do I recommend? There's a long list. There's a long list. So I guess one thing I'll say before I actually list any books, SI Gaming, is I recommend that Christians read anything related to Christianity and Judaism that they think will help them in their understanding of the Bible. Now, I think it's most advantageous to Christians to read things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, the earliest Christian writings, meaning the first 2 or 3 centuries after Christ, that body of Christian works. The Bible, of course, is first and foremost. But I think the problem with most Christians is they stop at the Bible and they never read another thing, and they think that they're good. The problem is they are missing so much context for what they have read in the Bible that would inform them on certain things, that would help them understand it better, that would connect dots for them. So, in terms of apocryphal works, pseudepigraphal works, for both the Old Testament, so we're talking about the Deuterocanon, as far as I'm concerned, that was in the Catholic Bibles and still is in some sense, but was taken out, like Wisdom, what are all of them? My brain sometimes is like, I can't remember anything. So the Deuterocanon, We're talking about Wisdom, Sirach, Susanna, Prayer of Azariah, Prayer of Manasseh, Bel and the Dragon. All those things that were taken out. The Book of Enoch is important. I can show you on my screen. The Bible Scribe app has most of the writings that I really consider valuable. That's, of course, why they're in the Bible Scribe app. And you can join as a member and get access to all these books for $10 a month. That's how people support me. But the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can see here, Book of Jubilees, Book of Jasher, I believe are important. Now, I'm not saying that, of course, these books are all 100% true and infallible. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that for a Christian, it is important that you understand what's in these books. And I think they should be studied in addition to the Bible, because they inform you on things that are in the Bible. What else? Tobit, Book of Tobit. Book of Esdras, Book of Baruch. There's tons of these that are valuable. Now we're getting closer to the time of Christ, the Apocalypse of Abraham, Ladder of Jacob. These are books that inform you on things that are in the Old Testament. Even some philosophers, Philo is a Jewish philosopher, so I found some of his work interesting. Gospel of Bartholomew, Gospel of Nicodemus. Now these are early church writings. The Life of Adam and Eve, the Didache, Ascension of Isaiah, Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, Clement of Rome, Epistle of Barnabas. I can go on, but really I couch everything I read to be mostly pre-Nicene. I believe that at the Council of Nicaea, that a lot changed for Christianity, and it's because Rome kind of tried to take over Christianity. Rome tried to assert itself as the leading church for all of Christianity. And of course, with the backing of the Roman emperor. None of that is part of what Jesus taught. No, Jesus never taught for that to happen. And I don't think ever did God intend for that to happen. The problem is now most of our history books are written, most of our histories and the thrust of Christianity is driven by the Catholic Church. And so that is a problem. That is a problem. So I usually focus my study on the Christian writings prior to the 4th century, and including some 4th century works, but not many. I do, of course, love Eusebius's work. But that and everything back, and I do not, of course, I study Gnostic writings for, understanding what Gnosticism was. But I, of course, would not encourage a Christian necessarily to study out of a Gnostic writing. That has to be looked at carefully. There's a lot of Gnostic writings that some people portray as Christian, and they're not. So like the Gospel of Thomas, there's many others that I won't go through all. But I hope that helps SI Gaming with, kind of where I stand on that. The Dead Sea Scrolls to me is a very important one. Like, I don't understand why Christians, they know that in their head, they hear that the Dead Sea Scroll discovery in the 1950s was one of the most important discoveries in the history of Christianity. They hear those words, but they don't act on it. They don't read the Dead Sea Scrolls. Why is that? Why would any Christian who counts himself a true Christian, one that loves God, one that loves Christ, hear that we have now discovered some of the oldest copies of the foundational writings of our faith and the Judaic faith? Why would we hear that they have now been discovered and translated and not look into them? It doesn't make much sense when you look at it that way, but that's where most Christians sit. So that to me is where I sit. If you know and understand the Bible, I encourage and expect that Christians should go outside that to start learning the context of the Bible, which is in these other writings. So there's my rant. Now, you asked another question, SI Gaming, and I'm going a little quick on these because I think that I'll just do this one rather quick. But you said, is the mark of the beast coming? Is the mark of the beast coming? Now, Not having been with me very long, SI Gaming, and I'm really excited you're here. I've been through a long history. We've been on the channel for about 6 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And I used to be a lot more, as some discussion has already happened here today, a lot more preteristic in my beliefs, thinking about 70 AD and what happened there. And I still totally understand. I've researched that inside and out. I totally understand that. But what I see in the book of Revelation, especially regarding the mark of the beast, is that some of those things have already occurred, and it was a historical occurrence. It actually has basis in history. But that if you study the scriptures and you study marks in general, you see the mark of the beast, you see the mark of God on the Christians in Revelation as well, that they are marked in the forehead with the name of their Savior. It seems to be throughout the scriptures, and even in the Old Testament, there's a couple of occurrences of angels marking people on their foreheads and on their hands for reasons. And it had to do always with someone's allegiance or worship of a being or a person or God himself. That when a person decides, I'm going to worship that being, that they are marked spiritually, not physically necessarily, but spiritually they're marked with the name of that entity. And so that's the way I look at the mark of the beast. And if you actually, of course, study history of the Roman Empire, the time that John would have been warning the Christians about, the first few centuries after Christ, as they're going to be facing Roman opposition, Jewish opposition, Rome, of course, being the new Babylon, according to not only the scriptures, if you understand them, but if you look at the other early Christian writings, they spoke of Rome as Babylon. So Rome is Babylon. And what happened was, even through the first few centuries after Christ, there were different times when the Roman emperors would force people to sign something saying that they vowed allegiance to the Caesar and the gods before they could do business, before they could do things. So what I think personally is that the manifestation of what's called the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation really manifested throughout history, and even to the present day could perhaps be said to manifest in that if you swear allegiance to something other than God and you worship it, whether it's being forced on you by your government or a political leader or whatever, then you are marked, and it's against God. It's against God. It's a bad thing. So I think even in the modern time, we need to be aware. We should never pledge allegiance to anyone except God the Father. We should never do homage to anything other than God the Father. We should never worship, obviously, anything other than God the Father. Because if we are His and we worship Him, we should have His name in our foreheads spiritually. Now, if you then turn and because of weakness, fear, whatever, compulsion, you turn and you worship another, you swear allegiance to another, then I believe that that's what the Bible is talking about in those cases. And so I do believe that this is more of a historical narrative that's in chapter, 11 and 12 and 13? I think it's 12 and 13, where the mark of the beast is mentioned. And I think that those chapters of Revelation talk about the burgeoning history of the Christian church. There were warnings for those Christians, just as they should be for us today. So I hope that helps with my take on it, my viewpoint. That's what I think about the mark of the beast, and the looking for it in the present day. Now, is it a microchip? Is it going to be this thing or that thing? I don't know. I'm not sure that. I really don't think that the microchip thing has anything to do with the quote mark of the beast, because that's not pledging allegiance to anything. It's not worshiping anything. It says in Revelation, those who worship the beast will receive his mark. Those who worship, bow down. Now, is getting, if you refuse it but are forced to get a chip in your hand, are you pledging allegiance to something or someone? No. So I don't know how that applies. And I don't know exactly how to tell everyone to respond to those types of situations. We're all going to have to make our own determinations. But the key is that we should never worship anything other than God. So, yeah, you're welcome, SI Gaming. I hope it helps. Yeah, I wish I had a video that kind of compiled the information historically about the mark. But of course, there was different times in the Roman Empire when this kind of thing happened. Nero was one of them. Like under Nero, there were times when he would compel people to worship him. And if you didn't bow down to him in certain scenarios, it wasn't something he necessarily enforced empire-wide, but in cases, and against Christians, sometimes I think it would be enforced by Romans, that if you didn't worship the statue of Nero or whatever, then they would kill you. Or they would, I don't know if it was really you couldn't do business with us anymore type thing. With Nero, to me, it sounds like they would just kill you or put you in the arena with the lions, okay? That seems to be the outcome when it was Nero doing this. And I'm not going to remember without looking it up. Let's see. Let me see if I can look this up real quick. I was looking up things about the Jesuits earlier this week, so I may have a video on that soon. Yeah, so the Mark of the Beast, let's see if I have it recorded here. Yeah, it was under Emperor Decius, the Decian Libellus, or Libelli, under the Decian persecution of Christians, that they would make them, what does it say? Let me open it this way. The persecution under Emperor Decian around 250 AD, well after 70 AD, for those of you who are focused on 70, was very great towards Christians. They were forced to pledge allegiance to the gods of Rome and worship them, or they had to provide a libel, a document signed by a magistrate that said they had a history of worship to the pagan gods. So either if they did not worship or show this proof document, libel, they could immediately be killed on the spot by the Romans, or they would lose all their property and inheritance, depended on probably the emotional state of the soldiers that were accosting them as to what would happen to them. The Christians, by the way, the Christians called those who went along with this. Now, this is why I think this is all part of what we call the Mark of the Beast. The Christians, the true Christians who saw other Christians going along to get along and signing the libel and pledging that they worshiped pagan gods, they had a name for them. Some of the Christians totally separated from these Christians that accepted the Roman this thing and did this, pledged to the Roman gods. The other Christians called them the lapsi because they lapsed in their faith. And some of them essentially excommunicated those Christians. They would not any longer fellowship with the Christians who had signed the Decian libel and said that they would worship or had worshipped the pagan gods. So the more devout Christians, especially in the East, which is of course where Christ and the apostles started the church, in Antioch, Jerusalem, Alexandria, Egypt, the Eastern churches looked at these Christians in Rome who lapsed in their faith and signed the Decian libel or worshipped and bowed down to the gods of Rome. They saw them as lapsed Christians who had lapsed in their faith, and they excommunicated them from their fellowships. And this was a thing. You can read all about it. It's interesting too that just after this libel started, 1 year later, the plague of Cyprian spread through Rome and killed thousands of people per day. Now, this is where I believe God's hand was in all of this. God sent the plague of what they call the plague of Cyprian, and it killed thousands upon thousands of Romans. And I think it was God fighting back against what we would call the Antichrist power, or the beast working through Rome. The beast being a literal demon, if you will, a high-level, high-order fallen angel that was driving Rome forward through history. Okay, so this is what we see, God versus Satan through history. And to me, this is a very apt example of that. Decian trying to force the Christians to worship pagan gods, and then God coming against the Romans with plague the year after. So very interesting. Yeah, Mike Jones. Yeah, I'm glad I found it and was able to share it. But I would continue to encourage those of you who are still thinking that all of these things in Revelation were fulfilled in 70 AD. It wasn't. It just wasn't. And Jesus did not judge the living and the dead in 70 AD. And when we're talking about Gentiles and even Jews in totally different areas of the world, and they had no relationship to 70 AD. I encourage you to consider these things and continue to think about them. All right. What else here? Anything else on this, the beast stuff? I don't think I'll do any more on it. Some of these guys were related to it. Here's some of the coins of the time of Decius, Emperor Decius. Pretty cool. So anyway, all right. Let's then move on to our next topic. Now, Julia Thomas, let's see how we can title this. Ezekiel 20, verse 25, and 18, and 20, and 25. And it's about the law, really. So let's put the title up like that. And we'll get started on this one. All right. So Julia, the way you asked this, you said, I had a question about Ezekiel 20:25. Which laws was God talking about, do you think? Also in chapter 18, he describes how he wants us to live and doesn't mention much of the law. Okay, so let's go to Ezekiel 20:25 first. All right, so back up. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button at the wrong time. Okay. Ezekiel 20. That's chapter 10, David. Good job. 20. Verse 25. Go down here. That's a big chapter. All right. This verse says, wherefore I gave them also statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live. And I polluted them in their own gifts, in that they caused to pass through the fire all that opened the womb, that I might make them desolate, to the end they might know that I am the Lord. Okay, so I have a feeling I know exactly what he's talking about here, but let me just double check the beginning of this. Talking about someone who had not executed his judgments and had despised his statutes and polluted his Sabbaths. Well, who is this? Let's see. The house of Israel. Oh, it's the house of Israel he's talking to. Of course it is. So this is the Jews. And in verse 20 and 25, he's talking about them, saying they didn't execute my judgments. They despised my statutes. Wherefore I gave them statutes that were not good, and judgments they could not live by, essentially. And I polluted them in their own gifts. So I think that what God's talking about here is that he knew they couldn't keep the laws, right? And this is said multiple times in Scripture. He knew that the Israelites were never going to keep the law. It's said in the New Testament multiple times, the law never made anyone righteous. Following the law never made anyone righteous. It was always what? It was always their faith. Now, in faith, if they had faith in God, they would obey his statutes and obey his laws, right? So the disobedience of the law was an example of their lack of faith in God. This is the reality of the law. God gave it to them to display their sin to them, right? That's what the book of Hebrews says. So this is what he's talking about here. I gave them statutes that he says, the way it's described seems odd to us, but they were not good. Judgments whereby they could not live, and polluted them. So he allowed them to pass into corruption, into pagan worship. Of course, they caused all that opened the womb to pass through the fire. This is where they were in Babylon sacrificing their children. Well, not even in Babylon. At different times throughout the history of Israel, they would sacrifice their children to Molech, of course. As soon as they were born, they would pass them through the fire, throw them off a cliff, and they were then in the hands of the deity Molech. This was how they sent the babies through the veil to the deity, the demon deity Molech, passed through the fire. So this is what God allowed them to do so that what? I might make them desolate, so that they would then know that I am the Lord. So they, of course, fought God. They fought obeying his laws that he gave them. And by the way, God only gave those to the Israelites, not to anyone else. But they didn't follow them. In fact, they turned to idol worship. So God allowed them to go down that path and hit the end at which they would hopefully cry out again to the Lord when they were desolate. And that's the way God allowed it to happen with them, so that not only they would turn back to him, but we as Gentiles and all nations of earth would see that and realize God is real. And heck, if the Jews just didn't do it right, we all see that and we understand sin because of that. Do you get it? That's the power of him giving Israel the law, so that all nations would see through that, through Israel's failure to obey God's laws, we would see what sin looks like, and they would see what sin looks like. So that, to me, Julia, is what we're seeing in verse 25 of chapter 20. Now, you asked about chapter 18, and you said chapter 18 describes that how he wants us to live, but doesn't mention the law. Okay, so let's go back to that. Chapter 18. The word of the Lord, or the Logos, came to me again, saying, meaning Jesus, before he was incarnated, came to Ezekiel and said this to him. What do you mean that you use this proverb concerning the land of Israel, saying the fathers have eaten sour grapes, children's teeth are set on edge? As I live, says the Lord, you will not have occasion to use this proverb anymore. Behold, all souls are mine. So as the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. The soul that sins, it shall die. But if a man is just and does what is lawful and right, has not eaten upon the mountains or lifted his eyes to the idols, neither has defiled his neighbor's wife or come near a menstruous woman, has not oppressed any, but has restored to the debtor his pledge, has spoiled none by violence, has given his bread to the hungry, has covered the naked with a garment. Yeah, you're right, Julia. This reminds me of what Jesus taught in the New Testament, doesn't it? Taking care of the poor and the widows, covering the naked, giving bread to the hungry. But also, he does mention some things that seem to have roots in the Mosaic law, like not coming near a menstruous woman. That's part of the Mosaic law. That's in like Deuteronomy, Numbers type area. So that to me is a little bit of a part of the Mosaic law. He that has not given on usury or taken increase, God calls out usury as, how do Jews get around this? God calls out usury here in Ezekiel 18:8 as a literal sin. I'm just wondering, how did Jews explain this verse away? Did they pretend they don't practice usury? I don't understand it. Anyway, I digress. You should execute true judgment between man and man, walk in my statutes, keep my judgment. Yeah, to me, Julia, this does hearken more to the teachings of Christ. It's more about the teachings of faith and not sinning. Of course, as we think back to even the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments were based on sins that could be committed. Literally, the Ten Commandments, for the most part, are just a list of don't do this sin, don't do that sin, don't do that sin. So just as that is a model for the Israelites, hey, don't do these things because they're sins, there's still sins in the modern age. Defiling your neighbor's wife or lifting their eyes to idols. These are sins for Gentiles too, but we don't have the law. We don't have the entirety of the law that we have to follow. We are supposed to not sin and have faith, and that is what justifies us before God through Jesus Christ. Okay. And in fact, the faith is what always justified these guys in the eyes of God. It's always the faith. It's just that Israel was additionally, as a nation, given this law so that they could, within that framework, God could show them sin, bring them back from the brink, save a remnant of them in 70 AD, and then display to all of us what sin really looks like in life and in the world. So, I hope that helps. Yeah, like you're saying, no law mentioned really. Yeah, it doesn't really mention specifically the Mosaic law, but I think it, especially since this is to the Jews, we got to understand who's being written to. This is to the Jews. So they would have interpreted these words even in context of their understanding of the Mosaic law. That's just how they function, right? That's how their minds work. But yeah, in general, these are things that we could all take to heart, mostly. I don't know about, like I said, the coming near a menstruous woman. I'm not sure there's any well, I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to leave that one alone. Oh goodness, we got to keep it a little PG here, I guess. But yeah, this is interesting stuff. Very interesting. Yeah, Christine, you said you think that Jesus' life began at his birth. I just wholeheartedly disagree with that. I just wholeheartedly disagree. In fact, I probably am going to do a video soon. Someone asked me in a comment about. Actually, they stated in a comment on one of my recent videos on the Trinity. They stated that the Bible nowhere says that Jesus was begotten. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I've now made a list of about 30 or so different places in the Bible and other writings, Christian writings, that say Jesus was begotten of the Father before creation. So why do you think Jesus said to the scribes and Pharisees, I was with Moses in the beginning. I was there in the beginning. And then they wanted to stone him because he's claiming divinity at that point. So I don't know how you can justify the statement that Christ did not exist before he was incarnated and born through Mary. I don't know any writing that supports that view. I don't. All right. Ain't buying it. You ask about hardening their hearts till the Gentiles are grafted in. Do you think that is still the case? What about him divorcing them? Well, the hardening of hearts, ain't buying it. Both those questions are very deep questions, I think. I think we could agree that for the most part, even in the modern time, the people that claim themselves to be Jews have hardened hearts against Christ. Wouldn't you? I would say that. I don't think there's any. There's no sense in which that doesn't completely apply to the people that call themselves Jews in the modern time. So yes, I would say they are hardened. And according to the prophecies that I have read and taught on this channel, at the end of time, the Jewish nation will be even more deceived by the Antichrist and the things that occur at that period. In fact, not only the Jews, but many people in the world be very deceived, but not the true Christians. So, and in your question about the divorce idea, the divorce idea is very complicated in the scripture, and I don't want to make a statement about that I probably would have to retract anyway. If you remember the book of Hosea, what was the book of Hosea all about? Why did God tell Hosea to take a prostitute wife and essentially to sanctify her? Well, that seems to be the model that God was trying to portray for Israel. That it was a parallel. He was trying to show Hosea what he was going to do with his nation Israel. So yes, there is an idea of divorce, but there is also an idea of restitution of a woman who has gone totally astray, a prostitute, a whore, essentially. And so you got to be aware of both things in prophetic scripture. So I am aware of both things, and I hesitate to say that God divorced Israel. I believe he brought them back from the brink and gave them another chance in Christ, and that at 70 AD, he judged the nation wholeheartedly, wholesale, and that at that time, though, a remnant did believe in Jesus Christ. We have Paul in Romans saying that at this moment, meaning in the first century, there was a remnant of the Jews that would be saved. So it pins the remnant to that time period. And so that's broad overview of things. So I just said be careful about the divorce thing and then stating that, oh, God divorced Israel, so he doesn't care about him anymore. I'm not sure that's 100%. Not sure that's 100%. I wouldn't go there without really being careful about that. All right. So let's move on then. Next topic, Flat Bob. This is what you asked about. You asked about the Qatar military base in America. Okay. Let me put that on there. Yeah, the real problem here is that if you actually take time to go and study and learn what is happening, they don't have a military base in America. They're not going to have a military base in America. That is a lie that's been portrayed by many, many posts on social media. It's not a military base. Now, in conjunction with a military base, they're going to establish training posts for Qatari, and I think it's focused on their Air Force, their pilots. It's in joint cooperation with a U.S. Air Force base, and actually, this has happened many times in our past with many different nations. It's nothing new, but everyone online, of course, in lockstep with the people who are pushing a hate all the Muslims narrative. Hate all the Muslims. Where do you think that narrative's coming from? Any of these extreme narratives like this, hate the Muslims. The Muslims are trying to kill us all. The Muslims are all in our country already. They're going to kill all of us. Any of those narratives, and those are the same people saying that there is now a Qatari Air Force base in America and they're going to kill us all. It's lies and it's nonsense. They don't have a military base. It is simply a joint training effort, as we've had with many other countries in the past. And it's a way that the U.S. reinforces alliances around the world. And it's nothing. It's just something we've always done. It's nothing new. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you were duped, Flat Bob, but you know, when I first heard of that too, I thought the same thing. I thought, why the heck we have a Qatar military base in the U.S.? Why? Well, I started looking at it, and I found out that wasn't what was happening. That's not happening. So that's it. It's not a military base. Qatar doesn't have a military base in the United States, nor are they going to. So. All right. Let's see here. Next topic we're going to do is from Patriot. Have non-believers been reincarnated throughout time? You said this, Patriot Keto Pop. You said, I feel like I have had past lives, but I'm also a baby Christian, and I feel like maybe Jesus is the way out. And when you are a non-believer, you just get stuck in a loop here. I don't know. Now, Thank you, looking up for him, Pilgrim. You responded to her comment and you said, check out Hebrews 9:27 that says, it's appointed unto men once to die, and after this the judgment. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin to salvation. So yes, and I would say, looking up for him, that was a perfect response. The Bible does seem to say that each person, human, will die once, and then the only thing left after that is the judgment. And at the great white throne judgment, the sheep and the goats are separated, the righteous from the wicked, and the wicked are thrown in the lake of fire, along with Satan, the beast, the false prophet, Antichrist, whatever you want to call them, all the fallen angels, those who have turned from their duties, they're all thrown in the lake of fire. And so in that sense, then the heavens and earth will be cleansed and remade at that time. So that's what we're looking at here. And Patriot, I would just say that, I'm not going to, chastise you for thinking about this or anything like that. I've seen a lot of people over the years question this type of thing and think about it. I don't know if you were with me when I went into some of the reincarnation texts on my channel. We looked at the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian text, Hindu text, that most people in the modern age tend to think reinforces the idea of reincarnation. But when I looked in those texts and read them for myself, I didn't really see reincarnation specifically talked about. I couldn't find anything that really supported reincarnation. It, of course, it supported the spirit of man after death and like afterlife, but it didn't support the idea of reincarnation. So I would say, Patriot, that my personal opinion on this is that the idea of reincarnation is not correct for humans, and that the people that have in their heads the idea of past lives, I personally think that is spiritual activity inserting that into your mind. And one thing that is going to, I think, break some brains wide open is when I release later this week my video about the demonology that Peter taught in the first century. And that talks about how demons influence us, what they can do, what they can't do, how they get in our lives, and how we can get them out of our lives. And in that information, you're going to see some things that might, alert you to the fact that demons can speak straight into our heads if they want to, if they are in proximity to us. Demons can put thoughts in your head that you think are your own. This is the type of thing demons do. So I'm not saying that you're possessed with a demon. I'm just saying we have to be super careful about things that are, of course, seem to be in contrast to the scriptures. So I would encourage you, Patriot, if you still, you're considering the reincarnation thing, try to find in scripture anything that makes you think that could be true, or anything in an early church writing, early Christian writing that says reincarnation could be true. I believe that I've read some early Christian writings that actually speak against reincarnation. So I haven't really collected that information into, my notes for that. But I just would say be careful about that. And I would trust, of course, myself, I would trust the scriptures over the ideas of reincarnation because of all those reasons. So I hope that helps. Christina Shank, you ask, where does the Bible tell us that demons can insert thoughts into our heads? Well, Christina, the Bible, yeah, it'll be in the video, but the Bible doesn't talk about demons much now, does it? The Bible only tells us very simple things, but you're going to see in that video, you will see a correlation to something that Jesus specifically said about demons. You'll see in this teaching that it corresponds exactly to what Jesus taught about demons. So there's some interesting correlations there. And I'll encourage you to watch the video when it comes out, and you'll have a whole new set of thoughts to think about in regard to this topic. Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, Deborah Hicks, you're right. Take every thought captive. I mean, that's great advice. That's great advice. And Christine, like you're saying, the Nephilim, yes. Uh, exactly. What you're saying is right. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on then to the next topic. Linda Connor, you asked this. I know I'm going fast on some of these. Some of these we've talked about a lot, so sometimes I debate whether to go into them deeply. But you ask, what is spiritual warfare? I think that we have to acknowledge that, and I don't know if this will rub anyone the wrong way, but the term spiritual warfare is a made-up term. That's not in the Bible, right? What's in the Bible is that our wrestle is not, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, dominions, powers. These are spiritual entities. So we know that part of the battle as Christians is against demonic forces, so to speak, in a general sense. So I guess that if we're looking at spiritual warfare as that, in the modern time, most people that talk about spiritual warfare, they talk about constant work against demonic activity in people's lives. You'll see people strapping people into chairs and throwing holy water on them and then repeating things to them about in the power of Christ, compel you, get out, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say this stuff over and over again, essentially, verbally beating the demon out of the person, so to speak. If you believe everything you see online, then that's what we see in the modern age. A lot of people that practice what they call spiritual warfare, they do things in this kind of way. Of course, anyone that is truly a Christian understands it's under the name of Christ that we have any authority over demons whatsoever. So, of course, the name of Christ is and should be used in trying to get demons to come out of people. But I would direct you to think about what's in the Bible first about spiritual warfare, about wrestling against these evil spiritual beings, both demons, fallen angels, unclean spirits. These are all different things we have to be aware of. The word devils is used many times. I do believe that the word devils, when it's used, is referring to unclean spirits, if you will, and not necessarily demonic activity. So again, two different things there. But when we look in the Bible, what we see happening is we see Christ able to simply touch a person and speak, and a demon will come out and flee. That's what we see. Now, we also see, as we have studied through the book of Acts, when it comes to the apostles, that it's a little more involved. What I have seen in my study of Peter and his work is that he prayed over people and then demons would come out. So he prayed in the name of Jesus Christ and the demons were caused to flee from the people. So it's a little different as time goes on, but I think we need to realize that what we see in the Bible as spiritual warfare is possibly a little different from what we see modern people doing when we hear them talking about spiritual warfare. So to me, that's important. It's important to understand. Again, I think some of this will be discussed in my video on the demonology thing. That'll be coming soon. So, Robert, you're right. Put on the armor of God. Absolutely. SI Gaming, what you ask in my name. Absolutely. Tomcat, you say sometimes you can make things real if you convince yourself it is, especially if you obsess over it. Yeah, Tomcat, you're 100% right. And to me, that's what I don't like calling people out necessarily, but when I look at the charismatic movement and a lot of the people that quote practice spiritual warfare, that's what I see. I don't see a reliance and a trust in the name of Christ and its power to overcome spiritual entities. What I see is something more of an obsessiveness, more of a repetition, vain repetition, if you will, some kind of weird struggle that I don't see in the scriptures. And when I look at what Christ did, when I look at what the apostles did in terms of casting out demons, I don't see the same things. So, you have to reason with yourself logically and say, well, did they just leave those things out in the scriptures where they like tie the demon-possessed girl down to a table or a chair and then throw water on them and yell at them for an hour and a half until they're all sweaty and tired and like going out of their skulls? Is that what we saw in the Bible? No, we never saw that in the Bible. We saw usually a very short encounter that resulted in an apostle or disciple or Christ himself calling on the name of God and the apostles using the name of Christ, and then the demon fleeing out of the person, okay? Or in one case, we saw the disciples try to cast a demon out of someone, and it didn't work. And then Jesus comes back and says, hey, that's a tough one. This kind usually only comes out by prayer and fasting. So that's what we see in the Bible, okay? We have to acknowledge that that seems a little different than what we see on YouTube. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So we need to think about all those things, really. Okay. Well, let's go on. I've got two more little things here. Joanne Meller, you ask if I could talk about this, and this will be probably the last thing we really do. You said, could I speak to the idea of a pre-Adamic population? I think what I will do instead, Joanne, is I will guide you to a video I have done. Let me do this. YouTube, and let me just go to my channel and find the video real briefly here, because I have done a whole video on this, and I believe it's called the Sixth Day Man. Let's see, Sixth Day Man. Yeah, the gap theory and the Sixth Day Man. So this video, well, that's a great shot of me. The gap theory, the Sixth Day Man, this pre-Adamic race idea. I do a whole treatise on this in this video, so you're welcome to watch this video. And of course, it's extensive. It's a lot of information there, and I can't give all that in our short time frame here this morning. So I will encourage you to watch that video. And I will summarize it in saying that I don't find any evidence in the literary evidence that I've got. This is what I'm talking about. All the writings I've read, way back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, to the Bible, of course, and the pseudepigraphal works of the Old Testament, the Judaic works, to the early Christian works. None of them talk about that there was any kind of gap in the creation days, nor was there any race before Adam. Every single text calls Adam the first man, the first human, and there's just no evidence to look at and say that there is a gap or that there is some pre-Adamic race. And I know that I know that, on this video, I poke a little bit at some of these guys here on the screen that talked about this. Arthur W. Pink, David Carrico on the Midnight Ride with John Pounders, they talk about this. Justin Fall, Steve Quayle, Tim Alberino, Gary Wayne, Max Yontz. Now, Arthur W. Pink and Max Yontz are some of the earlier people that talked about this, but there's just no evidence in the writings to have this kind of theory that essentially it kind of breaks God's plan for prophetic history. It doesn't make sense in light of anything in the Bible. So not only is there no evidence, there's nowhere in any writing where anyone says that there was a gap and there was a pre-Adamic race. Nobody ever says that. Not only that, the prophetic history we have from the prophets that God gave for all of the history of humanity and the earth does not allow for anything before creation. It does not allow for it. It's just not there. So I don't know what to do with that. people, keep hearing others talk about this online. And again, almost all of their arguments to justify their position come down to their interpretation of the Hebrew of Genesis chapter 1. Because they have to get inside just the few verses there, maybe even one single verse in Genesis 1, and they have to make you believe that it allows for some extended time period inside one of the, quote, days of creation that allows for other races of humans to exist, of which we have no recorded history, of which no writer in history, ancient history, ever talked about. So again, it's like you can reach for this straw all you want and push really hard to believe that this is true, but in the end, you will never have the evidence you need to prove your case. You just will never have it. So I don't know what to say about it other than that. I would say watch that video if you're super interested and you want me to go through what the arguments are. I go through them there. So I don't know what to say other than that. Flat Bob, you say the Bible may well be truth, but interpretation can be a big factor in what you walk away with. 10 people can read the same thing and have 10 different understandings of what it's saying. Yeah, well, Flat Bob, I would argue with that just a little bit. Because of the 10 people that have 10 different opinions, there may be 2 of those people that are actually well informed on the matter. So 8 of the 10 people probably don't have any business talking about what they're talking about. They're just asserting things without giving proof. That's why we have to have proof for the things we believe. We have to have evidence. And again, I will reiterate this, and I say this often. The only proof we've got, bar none, is the writings of the time periods. If you're not looking for your answers for those times in the writings that talk about them, as close to those time periods as possible, you aren't doing it right. So the problem is that the 10 people that have different viewpoints are all getting their viewpoints from weird sources, weird places. They're listening to this person. They're listening to that person. They may be getting it off X or I don't know. But very few people, almost no people, are doing the work of going to the writings that talk about the things that they are asserting and allowing those writings to inform them. There is no other evidence. I'm going to say it again. Everyone needs to think about this. There is no other evidence for the things we talk about here on Sundays from a historical standpoint. We don't dig in the ground and find evidence of a pre-Adamic race. If you think that that's happening out there and that our archaeology in this world is so good that we can dig in some specific location and find an evidence for a pre-Adamic race, you are tricking yourself. You are being duped by the system. We don't have that. The best thing we've got is the writings that specifically say things that we can look at, read, and understand. That's it. So the whole thought that this pre-Adamic race hinges on 1 or 2 verses in Genesis and has no other literary evidence anywhere, that right there should be enough for you to kind of, cast much doubt on all of this whole narrative. Cast doubt all over it. The only other evidence that people use, like Timothy Alberino in this shot, the other evidence like he uses is he goes to places like Machu Picchu and he points at big stones that are put together in a very precise way and says, this is evidence of a pre-Adamic race. But that's bull crap. He doesn't know anything about where those stones came from. He doesn't know anything about it. All he's doing is speculating. He's saying, I don't understand how the, early, ancient ancestors of man in the Bible times could have put this stuff together. So I'm assuming there's a pre-Adamic race that did it. That's nonsense. He's just coming up with things. I've bought a book by him and Steve Quayle, and it was the biggest load of bull I've ever read. They had no references that they cited where you could go find out the things they were talking about. It was assertion after assertion and speculation built on speculation. I didn't even read half the book because it was so bad. It was so bad. It was a waste of my money. So I don't know. That I'm going to get off on a rant. But I'm just saying, I do tire a little bit of going back into these topics again and again because they're topics that don't have evidence for them. They don't have the evidence. The corpus of evidence for history does not speak to this thing that's being brought forward. So, anyway. Mike Jones, like you said, Alberino, he speaks with all this authority, like in his voice. And he does. He comes across as this knowledgeable explorer like Indiana Jones, right? He's always got his like beige collared shirt and his fedora. So he looks like this great explorer or whatever. Reminds you of Indiana Jones. But the things he talks about, you listen closely, he doesn't back up his arguments with anything you can actually go back and read and point to. It's all just, I've explored, I saw this thing, I talked to this person, some, goofy archaeologist down in South America who agrees with everything I say. I mean, who cares? That's not evidence of anything. It's not evidence. So I don't know, man. It just drives me nuts because I think you guys know how I'm wired, right? I'm wired to look at the writings, to take the different testimonies from the writings and look at them as a corpus of evidence that helps inform our understanding of ancient times. That's it. That's where I start and I end. I don't take stuff from modern people that is out of thin air, that has no evidence. And I don't take that into my corpus of belief because it doesn't to me have any basis in reality. It has basis in only thought and speculation. So I just, it's hard for me. Yeah, Christine, I like what you said. Critical thinking requires sources. Anything that is, quote, proof requires sources. Anything you go into a courtroom to prove in front of a judge, it requires evidence that you can point to and say, look, this isn't me saying it. It's this thing. It's this person who has credibility saying it. That's what a defense is. A defense of your faith should be the same thing. It's, I have faith in God because back then Jesus did all these miracles. It's recorded by multiple people. Multiple people witnessed it and recorded it. So we have now a defense, a courtroom defense for our faith in Jesus Christ and God his Father. If we didn't have any of that, like these people online that say all of the Bible is corrupted and they have hidden all the real Bible from us, it's in the belly of the Vatican archives. The people who say that are removing all the evidence for their faith. They're essentially saying, oh, all the evidence for our faith in Jesus Christ is false, but yet I still believe in Jesus Christ. It doesn't make any logical sense. They are cutting their own legs out from under themselves. So we look as Christians, if we take that position, oh yeah, all the text of the New Testament and the Bible in general is corrupted and all the real texts are hidden from us. Well, then we just told the world that our faith is based on something false. So we have to be careful of this two-edged sword of all the speculations that are going on right now on the internet. all these things we see daily posted by this influencer or that person. This person may be just trying to build an audience on TikTok that's 100,000 strong so they get income because they sit in their basement living off their grandmother, trying to build a following online. Who are these people? What have they done that proves they have any knowledge of the things they talk about? Well, in a lot of cases, these people don't know anything, and they're just trying to bring the most interesting, the hot topic of the day, to the forefront on their channel so that they can get subscribers, so they can get a check for $1,000 each month or whatever it is, you know? So, you know, I just caution you, you know, that's what you, and we just read about it in Acts chapter 17. Who were the Bereans? What did they do? Well, as soon as Paul shows up in Berea, in the synagogue, teaching that Jesus Christ was the Messiah that the whole corpus of the Old Testament talked about, again, Paul relies on the texts, the literary evidence, the history. Then they say, we better study that same history to see if we can understand what he's saying, and it makes sense to us based on the writings, the literary history of the Jewish people. So they go back to the Jewish scriptures themselves, the Bereans, and they reread the Old Testament, knowing the new stuff from Paul that he's told them about Jesus Christ being the Messiah, doing the miracles, being resurrected by God, and they look in those scriptures, the historical writings, to see if those things are true. So we got the model in the scriptures. That's what we should be doing every single time that someone posts a TikTok or an Instagram post or I don't know, what do they do now? Snapchat? Is that what they do with Snapchat? I don't even know. I don't have Snapchat. I've never used it. It looks stupid to me, but maybe it's awesome. I don't know. Is that helpful? I mean, yeah, Allison, you're right. I'm ranting. I mean, I don't know what else to do on this type of thing. It feels ranty. It makes me angry. It makes me angry. It does. I will be honest with you. It makes me angry that people don't rely on the texts. Don't rely on the only valuable source of information that we have, and it's the ancient writings. There's no other source of information we've got on that stuff. Anyone nowadays that speaks on a topic can only get that information by reading the writings. There's no other way to get the information except making it up. That's the only way you can get ideas. It either is going to come from the writings, the evidence, or it's going to come out of your fancy brain and all the Hollywood ideas that you've been given over the course of your life. That's what it is, the Hollywood ideas. So I'm sorry, but that's just where I sit on that stuff. All right, there is almost nothing left. There's this one thing from Robert. And I won't spend much time on this, but you asked Robert, you said comparing Trump's actions and his agenda, it appears much like the definition of a fascist. I don't know what to say to that, Robert. If you feel that way, I'm trying to why don't we do this? Why don't we define the term? Let's define the term. Let's go to our favorite Wikipedia. No, actually, here, let's just see if this definition helps us. Fascism, a system of government marked by centralization of authority under a dictator, a capitalist economy subject to stringent government controls, violent suppression of the opposition, and typically a policy of belligerent nationalism and racism. Wow, that is a horrible definition. Let's do this. I don't ever like these definitions. Webster's 1828 dictionary. You can get to the 1828 Webster's Dictionary online. I encourage you all to use it. Okay, the word fascist does not exist in the 1828 dictionary. Oh, that's great. That's great. No, well, that was a complete fail. Complete failure. I tried. Let's go to the current modern Webster's Dictionary. Fascism. Let's see here. Fascism, fascists, blah, blah, blah. I guess we'll just go to fascism. Okay, let's see what the Webster says. A populist political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual and is associated with a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader. That's important. And is characterized by severe economic and social regimentation and forcible suppression of opposition. Okay, all I can do is ask you, does Trump fulfill these things? Is the way he's ruling, is it fulfilling all this? Do we have a centralized autocratic government? Autocratic means an autocracy. Auto means same or self. Autocratic. The power is held by the leader himself. Is all the power centralized with Trump? Does he have all the power? I would say the response is categorically no. We have rogue judges that are trying to handcuff him and restrict his constitutionally given executive powers all the time right now. Okay. In fact, he's working within the Constitution in everything he's doing. I don't understand, like, why would anyone say that he is an autocrat? Why would anyone say he's a dictatorial leader? He's not comprehensively saying things and then everyone just bows to his will. No, that's not even happening. That's not happening in this country. So that's an incorrect comparison. He's not that. He's not doing that. It says it's fascism is characterized by severe economic and social regimentation. How have we, since Trump has come into office, both times, 2 different times, how have we been characterized severely by economics or social regimentation? It's no different now than it's always been. I mean, we have generally a poor class. We have a middle class. We have an upper class. None of that changed when Trump came into office. He hasn't done anything about that, changed it, forced anything upon anybody in regards to social regimentation. So yet another point of what would be considered fascism is not something Trump has done. And then forcible suppression of opposition. Now, you might say that you might feel if you are in opposition to Trump, you may feel he's been forcibly suppressing you. But I would ask, how has that happened? You still can go online, say anything you want. In fact, still at this moment, people in opposition to what Trump is doing have more freedom online than I do. They can say more things and get away with more things than I can say as a conservative, I guess you would call me more Republican in my persuasion. But I can get censored more easily for saying the things I believe in than anyone on the other side can, than anyone who's against Trump. Now, this weekend, when the No Kings protests are happening all over the country, what did Trump do about it? He didn't do anything. Oh, he did go on Truth Social and post an AI video of him taking off in an F-16 and then dropping poop all over the protesters. He did do that, but he didn't do anything. He was just having fun with it. So I'm sorry, the arguments that Trump is a fascist just don't hold water. He's not doing the things a fascist or a dictator would do. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. You would be more apt to compare some of our other previous presidents to fascists. Obama, was he a fascist?
He was getting a lot closer. And Joe Biden or whoever was running the White House when Joe Biden was in office, they were getting a lot closer to fascism. A lot closer. So I don't even know what to say. Yeah, Julia, he actually did post that on Truth Social. There's an AI video he posted. And some people were saying it was mud. To me, it looked like poop. But in the video, he takes off in an F-16 that says King Trump on the side of it. And he's got a crown on his head as he takes off. And he starts flying over the protesters. It looks like through New York City. And the plane is dropping these huge loads of what looks to me like poop out on the protesters. And it's just hilarious. I mean, it's crude and gross, but it's also funny. So I don't know what to say. It's something else. Never had a president that would do that before. No. Oh, goodness. I don't defend any of it. I don't defend it. But in general, if you truly examine what he is doing, he just got done overseas going without sleep for like 36 hours to 48 to I don't know how many hours. It looked like without sleep. So he could go to these different leaders in the Middle East and try to establish peace deals. If you think that's what a fascist does, you don't really know the definitions of words. If you think that's what a horrible dictator and a fascist does, I think you got a problem there. I think you got a problem. Yeah, David Talks Bible. You say in Thailand, they will arrest you if you criticize the king. That's right. That's fascism. That's fascism. Dictator, autocrat, right? You cannot go against us or we put you in jail. Now, you know, some of the people on the other side, for instance, these No Kings protesters, people that protest ICE, some of those people might say that Trump is an autocrat or dictator because he's putting them in jail for obstructing the federal government from doing its job. Because the federal government has a mandate to protect our country from foreign invasion. And the illegal immigration that's happened over the past, I don't know how long, 20 years, it's illegal. It's an invasion from a foreign country or foreign countries. So ICE has a responsibility that has simply never been enforced much until now. They have a responsibility to, even in a violent manner, make sure that the laws are abided by, especially by foreigners who are not citizens of our country. In fact, Trump administration is still giving those foreigners more due process than they deserve as foreign invaders. They are foreign invaders and don't belong here. They don't have any rights here. They don't even have rights to stand in our courts. Do you realize that? They have every right to be smacked across the face, put in handcuffs, and dropped right over the border again. That's what they have the right to do. So, but the people, of course, protesting ICE, they're saying, oh no, Trump is a fascist leader. But they're not citizens. He's not oppressing citizens. He's oppressing foreign invaders. And he has every right to, and I support him 150% in doing so. There you go. Foreign invaders, get them out. So I don't know. Robert, you say, thank you. You support Trump, but if, and you kind of cut off there. So, okay, Flat Bob, 151. Yeah, you're right. Ain't buying it. You ask who brought them here. They didn't just jump up and decide to leave their lives for no reason and come here. No, they were paid, most of them. They were paid. There's so many different ways that they, quote, decided to come here. And it was corruption within our government that allowed them across the border in the first place. But the reason they came in a lot of cases is because they're either spies or funded by foreign military groups. or they were paid by Soros-based foundations with corrupt money laundered from U.S. aid. It was money from our taxpayer dollars, corrupt, laundered through U.S. aid and NGOs into the pockets of Soros and other foundations, who then they started campaigns in South America to bring those people here illegally. Those people, I'm sorry, stupid as they were to agree to do that, they agreed to do something illegal and knowingly did it illegally. It's illegal to come into another country, any country. So it doesn't matter where they came from or why or their reasons. They must go back. It is illegal and they are foreign invaders. Tell me, another country where you can just walk across the border and start living there. Tell me another country that'll let you do that. You won't find many. You won't find many. Yes, Linda, declaring asylum at the border is bullshit. And the fact that our other corrupt leaders allowed all this to happen does not excuse it and doesn't mean we have to support now these illegal foreign invaders in our country. We don't have to support that. They need to go back. That's what needs to happen. Now y'all really got me yelling, ranting. Yeah, Christine, if you're sneaking across the border, if you're getting a what do they call them? I can't remember what those guys are called that you pay to get you across the border. They have people they pay. That's all they do day in and day out is they take people's money to get them across the border. All of the people involved know that's illegal. All of them. The people paying the money to the not bounty hunters, but I'm going to say dogs or something like that. Whatever they're called. To get them across the border. They're paying money to get them across the border because it's illegal and dangerous. And they know it. You're right, Christine. You're 100% right. Mules. You're right. Human traffickers. That's right. Coyotes. I think all of those terms are used. Yeah. So, ain't buying it. You're saying that DT was a darn right up until... Donald Trump was a Dem right up until he became a Republican POTUS. That's true in some sense. That's true. I mean, I don't know what to say, but yeah, that's somewhat true. Of course, you have to realize that up until he became POTUS, he was mostly a real estate tycoon, and he was building a monetary empire. And so in the case of having huge real estate holdings and businesses and working within a framework that is most helpful to you for building those businesses and making money, yeah, he was a Democrat, of course, because they were making him tons of money. He was becoming rich off the Democrat system. So I'm not saying it's not justified. And yes, is he chasing tail most of his life? Yes, he's chasing tail most of his life, trying to get money. But I don't know what to say other than that. It doesn't mean he necessarily had agreed with every single Democrat philosophy. And all I can say is judge him by what he's doing now. Judge him by what he's now done for the last 7.5 years. Judge him by what he's going to do or what he's doing. I mean, I don't know what to say. He can have that history. Many people have that history. In fact, a lot of people in the last 7 years have turned from Republican or Democrat to Republican. In fact, I would say that maybe 30 to 40% of this country has changed now from Democrat to Republican. Do you blame them for being Democrat at one point? Do you say to those people, you can't be a Republican now because you were a Democrat in the past? No, you don't do that with anyone else. Why are you doing that with Donald Trump? I don't understand. Yeah, ain't buying it. You say they flip-flop all the time so they can stay in control, but Donald Trump hasn't flip-flopped in the last 7.5 years. So, again, judge him by what he's doing. I don't know what to say to you. Tomcat, you ask, is it right for Christians to start the revolution if Christians are supposed to be peace lovers? Almost seems like we are more oppressed today than in 1776. It's an interesting question, Tomcat. I don't know that I'll have a good answer right here, right now. But I would say in general, from what I understand of God and Christ's teaching on Christianity, and the way that I see in history Christianity working, that Christianity is not supposed to be a revolution of anything but the mind and heart. So if you consider a revival a revolution, then in some sense we are revolutionists. But it's never been historically, it's never been a violent type of revolution. But I would say that there is a concept, though, of self-defense that it has. I don't know. This is such a hard topic to talk about, actually. There's a concept of not self-defense, but defense of others in Christianity and in Judaism. That essentially, if you don't defend the weak and the helpless, that you are as bad as the people that are oppressing them, that are beating them, that are killing them. If you don't protect the weak, then you are as bad as the antagonist, the oppressor. So that concept is there as well. And so I don't want to take anything away from that concept. So I don't know. I haven't really examined the American Revolution in terms of that. But, there's more study I could do for sure. Precurious, you say Trump flip-flopped on the Epstein list. Trump flip-flops on lots of things like that, okay? You got to understand, Precurious, Trump flip-flopping on a issue or a topic is part of his strategy. It's just like in war. This is what Trump does. He starts down a road, down the path he wants to go, but then he pulls off of it, and then he goes back on it, and he pulls off of it again. It's considered by us as flip-flopping. What he's doing is throwing every person, every detractor off his path. It's absolute brilliance. He did it. He's done it on Ukraine. He's been back and forth the whole time. Oh, this week Putin is doing something good. This week Putin's bad. This week we're supporting the Ukrainians. This week the Ukrainians should give up that land to Putin. It's all over the map. And the reason it is because he is able to just fill the battlefield with clouds, with smoke. And they don't know what he's going to do. It's a tactic. If you haven't learned that yet, you haven't been watching what is happening the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah, HRG, divide and conquer. I mean, I'm not saying Trump is no saint. He's no saint, but he's brilliant. All right? He's no saint. But he's doing some really great things, and I don't know what to say. He's able to do things like we just saw happen in the Middle East. Now, is the peace deal like 100%? Is everyone going to like honor the ceasefire? They already have broken it, right? Multiple times. But he has brought this whole thing up to the world stage. Now, eyes of every country, eyes are on Gaza and what's going to happen next. He has vested interests in Gaza. Egypt, I don't remember all the countries, but Qatar, Lebanon, a bunch of these countries have vested interests in what is happening in Gaza now. It has made it so public and popular that now everyone's watching Bibi Netanyahu. And they're like, why is he dropping bombs today on Gaza? He's breaking the ceasefire. And hey, wait, he just did it because he just said that a few Gazans opened fire on some of their soldiers. If that's even true, why would he drop bombs on them? None of it makes sense anymore. And it's because by Trump setting up the deal and bringing all these countries into the mix, now it's completely publicized that both that essentially Bibi Netanyahu is screwing the whole thing up. He's screwing the whole thing up. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Ain't buying it. You said you were a trumpet for 1.5 years. Well, I'm not a trumpet, but you got to look out there and you got to say, I'm just saying, you got to be careful and look at what he's doing. Has he done anything that's hurt you or made your life worse? I mean, if you want to bring it down to that level, has he made your life worse? Has he moved the country in a better direction? You see some things happening you like? Do you feel the same as you did under Biden or Obama? Do you feel the same as you did in those times? You know, we need to somehow pull ourselves out of the daily milieu of, you know, X and social media and be able, and TikTok and Instagram, be able to look at this from a very high perspective and try to compare this time to other times. Are you thinking about the time right before 2016 when everyone was worried because Obama was building FEMA camps in lots of areas of the United States and supposedly building detainment facilities within different Walmarts all over the country? And the Department of Homeland Security FEMA had bought hundreds of thousands of coffins and taken them to these different camps all across the nation. Do you feel better now than you did then, or did you feel better when they were building internment camps for American citizens? Did you feel better then, or do you feel better now? It's just a question. I mean, you know, we got to somehow pull ourselves out of the crazy cycle online and look at this in a very astute way, you know. So I don't know. LG, you feel like they're building digital imprisonment for us now? Seems like Europe is doing that. Seems like Europe, just the other day, Keir Starmer, who is right now pissed off at Donald Trump, Keir Starmer has now implemented digital ID in the UK, right? But that hasn't happened here. That hasn't happened here. So, I mean, just weigh things in the balance. You know, don't just blanket statement. Everyone everywhere is now under digital control. We're all going to hell. I mean, come on. Come on. Ain't buying it. You say Ohio is the first state? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, all we can do is stop it, but you got to realize Ohio is 100% against Donald Trump, and the leadership in Ohio is nowhere near what Trump wants to do. He's not in cahoots with the leadership of Ohio. Ohio is off the rails. All right? So, you know, I don't know, just be aware of who's pushing what. Donald Trump has never once said that everyone needs to have real ID. Who's pushing real ID? TSA and other different political leaders that have nothing to do with Trump? I would say just, you know, I don't know, stay tuned. Stay tuned. That's all we can do at this point. We don't have any dog in this fight. You know, everyone voted the way they voted last election, and hopefully we did the right thing, right? We don't have a way to affect any of these things, except if it comes down on your head, you stand against it, right? If it comes down on your head, stand against it. I don't have to defend anybody. I'm not really trying to defend anyone, but I'm hopefully showing you some things, ways to think about this that are a little different, you know, than the mainstream, you know, than the people on the street corner yesterday at the No Kings protest. Preserve our democracy. If they wanted to preserve our democracy with like Joe Biden or Barack Obama, then they're idiots, right? They're idiots. Preserve our democracy. Whatever. Yeah, I mean, ain't buying it. You're on the right track. Give no consent. Don't give consent. Just we've got to stand for what we believe. regardless of what happens. Yeah, Flat Bob, you're right. The state is really more powerful in most cases than the federal government on most things, or should be. And, I'll be honest, like what I see is people flocking to my state. In the last few years, we have had just tons of influx of people from, Western states, democratic states, people where the leadership is corrupt, just flooding into our state. And honestly, I don't like it, of course, because all the people coming in are liberal in their mindsets. And so they're going to swing our vote now. But it's because their leaders drove their states to crap. And now they're coming into my state and they're going to start voting. I mean, it's horrible. I hate it. But what can I do about it? Maybe at some point I'll have to move to somewhere else, like Florida. Maybe I'll move to Florida. No, I'm not in Florida right now. I'm not in Florida. But I think people realize that the states have the ability to do a little more than we realize. Stand against the federal government if they want. That seems to be what Florida is doing for the most part on a lot of different things. So, Flat Bob, you say when you lived in Colorado, a ton of people were leaving California and moving there. Yes, that's what I'm seeing too. So, all right. Well, now that my voice is leaving me because I've been now yelling about Trump and fascism for so long. Thank you guys for your time this morning. I've had a blast with you. Please don't take anything I yell about as like anger towards anyone. It's not anger towards any of you guys. I just, I'm passionate about some of these things, and I hope that I've at least given you food for thought. If you disagree, continue disagreeing, but make sure that you're well informed about what's really happening. And I would just caution people against making blanket statements, again, that don't have much basis in reality. When you look at the facts, when you compare things, when you compare this person to that person, or this time to that time, is it the same? Does it look right? Blah, blah, blah. Just be astute, be analytical in your thinking. But I've had a blast today. Thank you for the new people that have joined today on the live streams. Great to have you. You can join anytime. We do this every Sunday. Try to just get topics out and talk about things. It's one of the only places we can talk about some of this stuff. I hope that our discussion on some of these things today doesn't get that they don't turn the Google algorithms against me again, which happens occasionally. But y'all take care and have a great week. God bless.
Welcome to the Bible.